The next stage, this is the fun bit with the credit card. We're going to paint in the rocks in the foreground. So, not too wet. I'm going to use the foliage brush because it's quite a stiff haired brush, and I'm going to put the paint on fairly thick. So we start with the light colour first, some raw sienna. Put the paint on in the rocks area, so it's that. Change the colour slightly, some green into there. And some raw sienna, maybe a touch of burnt sienna into there. So this is the background colour. Carefully paint that in. Then wash the brush out, squeeze the water out of the brush. Some ultramarine and burnt umber. Fairly thick, hardly any water at all. So this is quite thick paint, and you just put that colour over the rock formation. To there. Into there. And over the rocks in the water. Before it dries, use the card and you scrape the paint off the surface of the paper. So just pull the card over and stop the water's edge. Let's just make this just a little bit bigger. So, clean card and scrape the paint off the surface of the paper. With the medium detail brush, dark colour, we can just tidy up the edges. And a darker colour just in here. Actually, we could probably add a few more little rocks just coming down onto the water's edge. Just fade that in. With the large detail brush, now this is actually still quite wet. Well, I've scraped the paint down to the water's edge. It's still wet, but that could be quite good. You use some ultramarine and wash that into the water. Leave a few light bits. Comes down. Touch more blue. So that comes down through the rocks. Now, where this is still just a little bit wet, I just pull that down, you get the reflection of the rocks in the water as well. Just darken that just a little bit through there, and this colour just bleeds down into the blue. Then we just let that dry off. With the large detail brush, I'm going to paint in the sea. I'm going to start with some ultramarine, fairly pale, and wash that into the far distance. Just leave a little bit of light at the base of the headland. Bring that forward. Touch more blue, ultramarine. That's quite a strong blue, so I'm going to just tone that down with a touch of midnight green. So still keeping this light in the far distance. Some more blue. Down towards the beach. And we go over the masked breakers as they're coming in to the bay. Up to the building. I've masked off the chimney pot. So it comes along the top of the building and into the corner of the cove there. So blue, touch of green, a little bit darker there, and just stop at the beach. Wash the brush out. Some raw sienna, so fairly pale, but that raw sienna, I'm just going to touch of burnt sienna into that for the beach, painting the sand and the other side. Then we let that dry off. When the paint is dry, remove the masking fluid by rubbing with your fingers. So there's the breakers coming in. Let's get the masking fluid off the cottage, and there's the surf underneath the cliffs on the headland. Get rid of all the bits and pieces. With the medium detail brush and ultramarine and midnight green, just paint in one or two ripples or waves as they're coming in. Small brush strokes far away, becoming just a little bit stronger, and they're coming more inshore. So just underneath that breaking wave there. Dark, tuck that underneath the white. Then with some cobalt blue, just touch a little bit of blue underneath that wave there onto the beach. Then we move on to the cottage. For the roof, it's a tin roof, so we'll start with some burnt sienna. It's got a bright colour. Then the colour shadow with some burnt sienna, so it's a darker colour, and just pull that down in the direction of the roof, so it's sloping like that. Dark underneath the edge. Then we let that dry off. With the medium detail brush and a touch of raw sienna, just put a little bit of colour into that cottage. This is going to be a white cottage, but just a little bit of shade into there. And on this end of the cottage, a cobalt blue with some raw sienna. Slightly in shade there onto the chimney pot. There's a little door here which we'll paint in when this is dried. So some burnt sienna. Just drop that into the side of the building just to make it a little bit more interesting, and let that dry off before we put the door in. With some ultramarine and burnt umber, so it's quite a dark colour, paint in the door. And with a touch of burnt sienna. Now where this sandy beach is and the wall, it's pretty much the same colour. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of headland there, some just onto the beach, and that gives us a contrast between the background and the cottage itself. Let's just extend that through here so it links from one side to the other. And finally, with the fang off, we're going to put some grasses into the foreground. So flick up. This is country olive, not too wet. And here in the foreground, just some textures. And again, in the foreground, just flick that up so it goes in front of the water. And there we have the finished picture. This scene gives you a great excuse to use a credit card for the rocks. It's great fun, but practice before you start. I hope you've enjoyed this beautiful scene from the west coast of Ireland, and I hope you'll have a go yourself.
Now available to buy. Try these techniques at home whenever you wish. The DVD of today's workshop and the book that accompanies this series are now available to order from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.